This build ran every single game that I ran on it, and it only cost me $500. So together, let's take a look at the parts and see how you can make this build yourself. We're gonna start with the CPU, which I picked the Ryzen 5 5500. It has 4 cores, 12 threads, and it boosts up all the way to 4.2 GHz, and it cost me around $75. Now, if we go to eBay, we can find other similar CPUs that give you similar performance, like the Ryzen 5 3600. As you guys can see, it's going for $62, and it's a pretty solid alternative if you couldn't find the 5500. The 2600 is also another solid option, but I don't really recommend it as much. The 3500X is also another solid option. The 4500 is also a solid option. And so with the CPU out of the way, we can take a look at the motherboard. And the motherboard that I chose for this build is the Asus Prime B450M A2. It has 4 RAM slots and 1 Gen 3 M.2 slot. It's good enough for this build, and it cost me around $80. If we go to eBay, you can find AM4 motherboards anywhere between $60 to $150 something dollars. There are a ton of valid options, as you guys can see. Just pick any AM4 motherboard. It's not going to be an issue. Next up, we got the RAM. And the RAM that I have for this build is 2 sticks of 8 GB from Corsair with a frequency of 3000, and they will cost you somewhere between $60 to $100 depending where you live and how lucky you are. If we go to eBay, it's really freaking expensive, as you guys can see, and so it depends on how lucky you get. As you guys can see, this one is for $80. This guy's selling it for $60. This guy's selling it for $55, and so it depends on how lucky you get, and it depends on where you live. And so we can move to the next part, which is the case. And the case that I picked for this build is just this Chinese case. Take whatever case you can find. It's not really important. Just buy whatever case you can buy, and buy as cheap as possible, because the case doesn't really matter. The case that I put in this build cost me around $45. It has 3 RGB fans. It's more than enough. For the storage, I put a 120 GB SSD for the Windows and maybe 1 game. And for the rest of the games, we have an HDD that is 500 GB. They both cost me around $35, and they should cost you around $35 to $50 depending where you live and where you buy them from. The power supply I picked is a Thermaltake 600 watts non-modular. It's good enough for this build, and it cost me around $45. For this particular build, you shouldn't really go lower than 600 watts for 2 reasons. First, upgradability in the future, and second, this GPU does draw a little bit of power, and so I wouldn't recommend any less than 600 watts. It should cost you around $60 or maybe $30, depends on what brand you buy, and it also depends on where you live. On eBay, I'm seeing that Thermaltake Smart Series 600 watts goes for around $50, and so we can move to the next part, which is the final part for this build, the GPU, and I picked the Gainward Ghost RTX 2060 Super, and it should cost you around $175. Don't be fooled by the age of this GPU. It is way better than you think, and without further ado, let's get to the benchmarks. And the first game we have for today is Alan Wake 2. We put the DLSS to quality, and the rest of the settings set to medium, and the resolution, of course, to 2K. And by the way, all of the games that we have for today are on 2K. All of the benchmarks are done on 2K resolution and not 1080p. And so this $500 build is giving us more than 60 frames per second on Alan Wake 2 on 2K. What more could you ask for? I cranked up the settings to medium to see how much frames we get, and we were getting around 40 to 50 frames per second. Buttery smooth. What more could you ask for? We can move to the next game, Counter-Strike 2. I put the settings to as low as possible, except for the FSR. I disabled it. We're playing on native 2K resolution, and we're getting more than 170 frames per second depending on where you are and how many players are against you, etc. And so you can literally go professional with this build on competitive games like Counter-Strike 2 or League of Legends or any competitive light game similar to Counter-Strike 2. So far, I'm loving this build, and we can move on to the next game, Cyberpunk 2077. I put the preset on high, DLSS, quality, quality, and we're getting 50 plus FPS on Cyberpunk 2077, and sometimes it goes all the way up to 60 or even more. We're utilizing the GPU 100%, so we're not having any bottlenecks with the GPU nor the CPU. It's a pretty good build. I love this build so far. And so we can move to the next game, Forza Horizon 5. I put the settings on high, upscaling set to ultra quality, and we're getting more than 70 FPS. I would say it's more than enough for a racing game. It is buttery smooth. You don't really need any more than that. We're not having any bottlenecks, as you guys can see the utilization and temperatures of both the CPU and GPU. Next up, we got Ghost of Tsushima. We're getting more than 60 frames, and this game in particular is mostly GPU intensive, and so if you want more than that, you're gonna have to buy a better GPU. And by the way, another alternative to the 2060 Super is the RX 5700 XT, in case you couldn't find the 2060 Super. Next up, we got Horizon Forbidden West. We're getting more than 60 frames per second, buttery smooth experience, no lags, no drops. We're not facing any bottlenecks issues. It's just a wonderful PC. Like, what more could you possibly ask for? The downsides of this build are so few. In terms of upgradability, you don't really have that much of a headroom, but in terms of performance, we're getting a real good performance. Next up, we got Red Dead Redemption 2. I put the settings to the maximum possible settings, and we're getting more than 40 or 45 FPS. Now, it's not the best experience that you can get out of Red Dead Redemption 2, but in case you wanted a little more frames, you can just crank the settings down a little bit, not even that much, just a little bit, and you're gonna get that sweet 60 FPS that you're looking for. And by the way, let me remind you guys, all of the benchmarks are being done on 2K resolution and not an 80p. Next up, we got Dying Light The Beast. I put the DLSS to quality, the rest of the settings on medium, and resolution of course to 2K, and we're getting 40 plus FPS. It is a wonderful experience. I just don't see a point in having more frames in such a game. It's just a zombie game. In fact, I would say the lower FPS gives it some sort of a cinematic look. But if you prefer 60 frames per second, you can just crank down the settings a little bit, or maybe lower the resolution to 1080p, or maybe you can put the DLSS to balanced. You have plenty of options depending if you prefer graphics or frames. And next up, we got God of War Ragnarok. I put the settings to medium, resolution on 2K, and DLSS to quality. We're getting around 40 frames per second. For some reason, this game was laggy. I don't really know why, but I think it's because I just started the game and it's sort of compiling shaders and doing some other similar things, and that's why the game was a little bit laggy. But other than that, I would say it's a wonderful experience in God of War Ragnarok, and it's more than playable, and you can just lower the settings a little bit, again guys, or lower the DLSS to maybe balanced, and you're gonna get the sweet 60 FPS that you're so desperate for in case you really want 60 frames. Next up, we got GTA V Enhanced. I cranked the settings to as high as possible, maximum RT on 2K and DLSS on quality, and we're getting more than 50 FPS. I just love this PC, man. Like, what more could you ask for only $500? I just don't see a reason to hate this build, man. Like, the only possible reason that you would not like this build is maybe upgradability, but even that is solvable because you're only paying $500. And so we can move to the next game, Minecraft, and we're getting around 300 frames per second on 12 render distance chunks. It's just more than enough. Like, what more do you need? And even if you add shaders and other things and mods, you're still gonna get a pretty good experience. Next up, we got Metal Gear Solid Delta, DLSS set to quality, resolution set to 2K, and the rest of the settings on medium. We're getting around 30 frames per second. Let me remind you, this game sucks. Let's just move to the next game. STALKER 2. All the settings on medium, DLSS set to quality, resolution set to 2K. We're getting 45 plus FPS. What more could you ask for? This is just wonderful. I just don't really have anything to say about this build, man. It's awesome. There aren't really any issues with it. Maybe the only issue is the HDD, and you can change that for like $40 maybe. So like, what more do you want? Next up, we got Silent Hill 2 Remake. Resolution, of course, is 2K, DLSS on quality, and the rest of the settings on medium. We're getting around 40 FPS, up to 45, depends on where you are in the game. This is one of the games that I do prefer graphics over frames, because the graphics does really affect the overall experience of this game, since, you know, it's a horror game. And so, in my personal opinion, I think this is the sweet spot to play Silent Hill 2 Remake on this build. If you don't agree with me, change the settings to whatever you like. And next up, the last game that we have for today is The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered. We're getting 80 frames per second, man. What more do you want? All of the benchmarks for today were done on 2K, and this PC cost me around $500 only. I love this PC. I don't see any reason why you would hate it. But if you disagree with me, tell me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end, and see you in the next one.